Hey folks, this is Sarbjeet Johal coming to you from reInvent 2024. We have a great guest in this podcast with us today, Mr. Chris Casey. He is Director of Partners in APJ. With that said, Chris, welcome. How are you doing? This is just day one.
Yeah, day one. Thanks very much for having me, firstly, Sarbjeet. It's great to be here. reInvent is always one of the most exciting weeks of the year for us at AWS, and this year is no exception. So it's great to be here, and thank you very much for doing this with me today.
Oh, thank you for being here. With that said, let's get started. As we all know that AWS Partnership Program is sort of one of the strongest in the market. How is it evolving in how you guys are enticing the partnerships who are being pulled by other vendors as well to bring them on board and make them grow?
Yeah, I think at AWS we're thinking about our partners as an extension of our teams, and I think if you hear Matt, our CEO, talk about it, or Ruba, who looks after the specialist and partner organization, hopefully there's a consistent message out there to customers and partners that AWS views our partners as a force multiplier for our teams, because the impact that we can have on our customers across the world, but also in Asia Pacific and Japan, where we're operating in 17 different countries, we simply can't reach all of those customers with the AWS technology without the help of our partners. And that ethos or mental model has now become much more ingrained and prevalent across our AWS teams. So you're going to see that as a theme from us this week and then also beyond. In terms of this week at reInvent, there's a lot of exciting announcements with our partners. Just today we announced a new strategic collaboration agreement with Fujitsu, who's obviously a very large partner of ours out of Japan. And throughout the keynotes this week, you're going to hear other announcements with us from our partners in APJ, as well as around the world. And also, we're continuing to look at how we refine and redefine some of our AWS competency programs, which certainly help our partners go to market more efficiently with AWS, and importantly, help our customers discover who's the best partner for the use case that they have.
So talking about the specific programs, the Competency Program was launched a few years back. Are there new competencies being added this year, especially more specific to GenAI?
Yeah.
And if there are, how many partners, or if you can share some numbers, are gaining that sort of certification, if you will? Yeah,
so we are announcing a few new competencies this week, and then particularly with generative AI, we actually announced that earlier this year, and we were the first hyperscaler to put together a competency program specifically for partners, specifically for generative AI. And our partners who've been in that competency program, we have multiple partners across Asia Pacific and Japan that are using that program. To give you some examples, Local Measure out of Australia and New Zealand, LG C&S in Korea, HCL Tech out of India, who's a big systems integrator for us, all have that competency program. And that is really helping our customers, because obviously generative AI is top of mind for many of the customers that we work with, in them embarking on proof of concepts, but also importantly, moving those proof of concepts to production, and viewing generative AI competency partners with AWS who've had a proven track record of being able to deliver outcomes for customers is something that our customers truly value. And our partners who are involved in that competency specifically are actually seeing higher conversion rates, up to 50% higher, because of that specialization and that designation they've been able to achieve with us. So certainly we do view competencies as an important aspect of the partner program. 80% of our customers do say that the specialization of an AWS partner is one of the top 3 things that they're considering when they're trying to determine which AWS partner might be best suited for their workload. So it is super critical that we help our partners specialize and differentiate, but we're doing that on behalf of our customers to help them make easier and more streamlined decisions.
Awesome. Actually, competency program, actually, I spoke to a few smaller partners last year here. They had a few things to say about the competency program. They said it's good for bigger partners and because they can put the resources there and the investment needed and all that stuff. In that context, are you guys doing some other programs for the sort of lower tier of partners or the second tier of partners where they can't sort of participate in this program, but they have different programs to enhance their sort of marketability?
So the competency programs are available to all of our partners, and we are being very thoughtful about maintaining a high bar within those competency programs, because we want to make sure when a customer is viewing partners that are in those competency programs, that there is a proven track record for some of the partners. So there are examples of smaller partners. Local Measure is a good example of a software company based out of Australia. They've had a very large impact across AWS globally, but they're not a huge team in that respect, and they've achieved our generative AI competency. It's just sometimes the smaller partners, when we're looking for things like referenceable customer use cases and case studies, it might take them a little bit longer to achieve those, to then eventually get the competency designation. But it is available to all partner types. And really, I think the key, Sarbjeet, in terms of this topic is making sure, especially for our smaller partners, that they are very focused and differentiating themselves in a few specialties. And I think that is typically helpful for the partner because it helps them reduce operational costs and execute more efficiently. And it allows them to focus on the competencies that are a natural fit for their business, where they can drive sustainable and profitable growth for them. But also for us, it helps us be very deliberate and targeted, especially in APJ, where we have customers in countries like Indonesia, as an example, who are looking for a local Indonesian partner to actually be able to work with.
Great. Chris, one thing actually comes to my mind is about the cultural differences and the execution of the partnership programs. I have worked in different countries and worked in Germany a lot, and I saw that cultural difference was huge. But you cover so many countries in the sort of developing part of the world, if you will. Most of that is developing sort of nations, if you will. And there are some economies that are big there, right? And some are smaller. So how do you guys balance that cultural difference between countries? Because here in the U.S. or in North America, we have one big economy, and there's some consistency of law and order and policy and regulations. But over there, it's like kind of zigzag there. Does that impact you guys to execute this program?
Certainly in Asia Pacific and Japan, it is, to your point, a very diverse region, not only for AWS, but just if you're looking at the stages of digital transformation that each of the countries are in. We operate in 17 different countries across Asia Pacific and Japan. There's more than 100 million companies across the region. 2.5 billion people live in Asia Pacific and Japan, even if you're excluding China there. And as you mentioned, they're all very diverse in terms of the cultures in each of those countries. And also, as I said, the level of cloud maturity or digital transformation in those countries. So we really try and take a country-first approach in terms of how we're implementing and executing with our teams on the ground, and making sure we're giving our AWS partners a streamlined mechanism to be able to deliver with and through our local teams on the ground. So to give you an example, ICS Compute in Indonesia is one of our strategic partners in Indonesia. And we signed a strategic collaboration agreement with them in 2022, I believe. And since then, they've been able to grow more than 300% since we've signed that agreement with them in 2022. But also importantly, they've been able to expand outside of Indonesia with us to other countries across our ASEAN region. So to answer your question in terms of how we think about it, we need to be very deliberate about the customer needs in each of the countries and making sure we're bringing ideally local partner capabilities. And it doesn't have to be a local partner, but it can be a global partner with local capabilities on the ground to meet those customer needs based on the stages of maturity those customers are at in their cloud adoption. In some of the countries, we are still in the very, very early stages of cloud adoption, which, if you were rewinding in North America, you might say is 10 to 15 years ago, where they're still thinking about moving the initial databases and disaster recovery and backup workloads from their own data center into the cloud. in other countries, like Japan and India, where India has the third most startups in the world, there's a lot of innovation happening in the generative AI space and software companies that are starting from the ground and trying to grow. So we need to think about it in a country-first model and then be very deliberate about how we're supporting partners across the region, but most importantly, in each of those countries.
Great. That scale is vast there in Asia Pacific. Actually, most of people don't know the number of people living there and the size of the economy, and then how fast they're developing, right? So, and another thing is I think the technology is the component which sort of binds the whole world together. So it's a common layer across the globe. I usually see that as and there's a horizontal piece to it. Like even though the cultures are different, people adapt to technology pretty fast, especially when it enters through the door of B2C to B2B, like mobile took over. Yeah. So that's great. Moving to more into the momentum in APJ, a little bit more color in that. And during that, sort of when you answer that, if you can shed some light on there's some partners who are global, so they cover sort of most of the countries or regions as well, and some are regional. We have talked about the country level, but at the regional level, are there any differences, or how is APJ doing as compared to North America, for example, or Europe?
Yeah, so we've seen a tremendous amount of growth in APJ this year, and we're very bullish about the opportunity across the region. If we just take India as an example, I mean, today it's the 5th largest economy in the world. It's the fastest growing established economy in the world. It's projected to be the 3rd largest economy in the world, and has one of the largest ecosystems of startups and ISVs in the world. So, in terms of in India, the growth for us, we obviously have some of the larger, better known global systems integrators that are based in India and have had a tremendous impact across AWS around the world. The TCSs, the Infosys of the world, Wipro, as an example. And so we partner with them not only in India, also across APJ, and then also across the world in terms of executing. But as you mentioned, our partner network at AWS is really diverse, and we view that as a privilege and a trust that we have with those partners. We've got 130,000 partners in our AWS partner network, more than that, and 70% of those partners actually are headquartered outside of North America. So when you think about that diverse landscape, you have partners that the company didn't even exist 3 years ago, and they've been able to grow and build a business with AWS. And then you've got other partners that have been in the consulting space for many, many years, or they're global software companies that are very well known, like SAP and Salesforce, who are really trying to continue to help customers transform using technology, both theirs and AWS, to help grow their businesses. So across the region, there's a really exciting opportunity for us, not only with the global partners of AWS, but also some of the local partners that can have a real impact on the communities that they're operating in.
Well, that's great. Another aspect actually is that what I usually say is to out-compete your competition, you have to out-educate the market, right? So I know Amazon is pushing the certification programs and education of the practitioners to the sort of globe, if you will, the whole market. And partners play a role in that as well. And they train their own people as well as they train the customers as well further, right? So any particular program or initiative you want to highlight for the training side of the things?
Yeah, there's probably 2 that come front of mind. I think generative AI being such a hot topic globally, we've made a conscious decision at AWS on a global basis to train 2 million people on just basic generative AI cloud skills by the end of 2025. So that's probably an indication. That wasn't a goal of ours, 2 years ago, but us being flexible about what's happening, not only in the market, but just in sort of the global hot topics and how we can help people get a basic foundational understanding of these new and evolving technologies. But in APJ, we've trained more than 7 million people on basic cloud skills, which when you think about the impact of that and what that can have, that's AWS directly training them. But then to your point, our partners, which we view as an extension of our team, are training individuals on how not only to use the technology, but I think also one of the things that's maybe less understood is the people and the cultural and the process transformations that need to come is super important. Because when you're talking to a customer about, their initial step into the cloud, but more importantly, the business opportunity or challenge they're trying to solve, technology is a piece of it, right?
True.
And for them to be able to realize the business value from whatever strategic objective they're trying to achieve or whatever business problem they're trying to solve, it needs to be much broader than just the underlying technology that changes, because just moving a database from a data center without modernizing the people, processes, and technology associated with that database, you're not going to be able to realize the business value. And more often than not, it's our AWS partners that are the ones that are intimately involved with the customer in terms of redesigning those processes.
Yeah, true. Actually, the partners are closest to the sort of culture, if you will, and the businesses as well on the vertical side. So some partners will focus only on certain verticals as well, right?
Yeah.
So auto, for example, and/or healthcare, and they specialize by vertical as well. So with that said, I think cricket, our team is in Australia. How are you guys doing?
I thought we had some topics that were off limits. No, I'm kidding. Yes, as we're recording this podcast, India and Australia is in the midst of a test series in Australia. I'm from Australia. Obviously, Sarbjeet is originally from India, so there's a nice, healthy rivalry here. And unfortunately, as we're recording this podcast, Australia is 1-0 down in the series. So there's an opportunity for us to come back. I think there's 4 more matches, but I don't have high hopes on that right now.
I wish you all the best.
Yes, thank you. We're going to need every piece of luck you can give us.
Cool. Yeah, you will do great, actually. So, all right. To wrap this discussion up, anything particular you want to mention to our audience when they are considering picking a partner and/or just even looking at the vendor level as well. So any parting words?
I think on the customer side, being as prescriptive as you can as to what you are trying to achieve. And, we take customer trust, is the utmost importance. Security is job zero for AWS, but then maintaining customer and partner trust is right up there too. And I think the more that customers can be very open and transparent with us in terms of the business objectives that they're trying to achieve or the business challenges that they're trying to address, what that means is that it makes it a lot simpler for the AWS teams to help guide them on the best next steps. And if you flip that over to the partner side, the more that we can be very clear with our partners on the customer needs where we do need the specialization and differentiation, that helps our partners become more operationally efficient and achieve sustainable and profitable growth faster. But importantly, it helps empower the AWS teams to find those pairings, if you want to think about it like that, between customer and a partner much more efficiently. So as we're working with our partners, we're trying to be very deliberate with them on where we do need extra speciality and extra help to support customers in specific countries. And not all of that is the brand new shiny object of the generative AI competency. There's still, depending on which reports you use, between 80 and 90% of workloads are still on-prem. So there's still a lot of legacy mainframes out there. There's still a lot of legacy Unix servers. So that as a foundation is just as important as some of the newer competencies, but really encouraging our partners to be very deliberate and specialized, and also to think through how that adds sustainable, profitable growth for them is very much in our interests as much as it is the partners. And we're going to continue to innovate to help make that even more efficient for our partners and customers. AWS Marketplace is something that we're continuing to invest in because we think it helps automate both the partner and customer experience in terms of finding those connections and, importantly, deploying those solutions on AWS. So continuing to push us on what we can do more to help both sides of that equation become more efficient and more effective is all we can ask. And we'll continue to lean as fast as we possibly can to make a meaningful difference to both customers and partners.
That's great. Actually, you brought up the marketplace sort of topic. Marketplace is the one sort of mechanism where you can bring in a bunch of partners and even other vendors where you do a big service to the customer base. Like it can be ISVs, it can be enterprises, it can be partners themselves, right? Getting services from other partners. It's a great medium to enhance what I call feature proximity. The idea of feature proximity is that when you're doing one thing and you need to do another thing, you have one technology and you want another piece of technology, where do you go to get that? So I think the marketplace enables that. And then it's an age of partnership and ecosystems, and marketplace plays a huge role. And last year we were told that every $1 spent by the partners, they make $6. And I hope that's 7 now. And with that said, thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks, Sarbjeet.
For being here, and enjoy the discussion.
Thank you very much for having me, and enjoy the rest of reInvent.
Thank you, too.